chapter 5, Mishnah 6, the Torah states that not only digging a pit, but merely uncovering a pit makes one obligated for any damage it causes. See Exodus chapter 21, verse 33. The Mishnah discusses these laws regarding a pit that is owned by two people. Normally, both owners would be obligated to pay for any damage caused by their pit, but in the following cases, only one is obligated. If there is a pit that belongs to two partners, and the first one passed it by, uncovered it to draw water, for example, and did not cover it again, and before he left, the second one passed by, and the first one gave the cover to the second, but the second one too did not cover it, only the second one is obligated to pay for any damage caused later by the pit. The second one must pay because he should have covered the pit. The first partner, though, does not have to pay because he fulfilled his responsibility by giving the cover to the second one. Another case regarding a pit that belongs to two people. If the first one covered it properly, and the second one came sometime afterward and found it uncovered, because, for example, the cover had become wormy and broke, and the second one did not cover it, the second one is obligated to pay for any damage later caused by the pit, since he should have covered it but did not do so. The first partner, however, does not have to pay because he covered it properly. Although it later became wormy, that was an unlikely accident, which he was not expected to foresee. The Mishnah now teaches some general laws of a pit, which apply regardless of how many people own it. If the owner of a pit covered it properly, and nevertheless an ox or a donkey fell into it and died, because, for example, the cover had become wormy in the meantime, he is not obligated to pay damages, since he covered it properly and was not expected to foresee that it would become wormy. But if he did not cover the pit properly and an ox or a donkey fell into it and died, he is obligated to pay. The Mishnah considers the law where an animal fell into a pit not because it stepped into the pit's airspace, but because a worker was digging inside a pit, and the noise of the digging startled the animal, causing it to fall. If it was near a pit and fell forward into the pit because it was startled by the noise of the digging, the owner of the pit is obligated to pay for the damage. Even though it was the noise, rather than the pit, that caused the animal to fall, the owner of the pit is liable because the damage occurred in his pit. But if the animal fell backward onto the ground outside the pit because it was startled by the noise of the digging, the owner of the pit is not obligated to pay, because in this case the damage happened outside the pit. The Mishnah discusses what type of damage the owner of a pit is obligated to pay for. If an ox fell into it together with its gear, such as its yoke and plow, and the ox was injured, and the yoke or plow broke, or a donkey fell into it together with its gear, such as the blanket under its saddle, or a bundle of clothes it was carrying, and the donkey was injured and the items were torn, the owner of the pit is obligated to pay for the damage to the animal, but he is not obligated to pay for the damage to the gear. This is because the Torah states in Exodus chapter 21, verses 33 and 34, if a man uncovers a pit or digs a pit, and an ox or donkey falls there, the owner of the pit shall pay. By mentioning only animals, the verse implies that he must pay only for damage to animals, and not for damage to their gear, or other objects they are carrying. The Mishnah defines the type of animal for whose injury or death the owner of a pit must pay. If an ox that is deaf, foolish, or young, i.e., it has not yet been trained to pull a plow, fell into a pit and was injured or it died, the owner of the pit is obligated to pay, because such animals do not take care to avoid pits. But he need not pay for damage done to a normal animal. Since a normal animal looks where it is going and tries to keep away from pits, its falling into a pit is an unexpected occurrence for which the owner of the pit is not responsible. The verse quoted above, which mentions only animals and an ox or a donkey falls there, excludes not just objects but also people. The Torah thus teaches that even if a person falls into a pit and dies, the owner of the pit is exempt from payment. The Mishnah elaborates upon this law. Even if a young boy or girl, or a male Canaanite slave or female Canaanite slave fell into a pit and died, the owner of the pit is not obligated to pay, because the verse implies that he must pay only for the death of animals, and not for the death of any people, regardless of their age or status.